The blue glow of my laptop screen at 2 in the morning wasn't unusual. What was unusual was finding a chat window I'd never seen before, minimized in the corner like a guilty secret. My name is Jake Morrison, and I fix computers for a living. Not the glamorous kind of IT work I used to do at the big tech firms, but the kind where people bring me their ancient machines and expect miracles. At 42, with graying temples and calloused hands, I've learned that people underestimate the guy who crawls under their desk to untangle cables. That night changed everything. The chat window belonged to my wife, Emily. The messages made my stomach drop to my boots. Intimate conversations with someone named D that left nothing to imagination. Plans for meetings. Complaints about her boring husband who can't even hold down a real job. I sat there in our kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of our 15-year marriage. The fixer-upper house we'd bought with such hope, now showing its age in peeling paint and creaky floors. Emily's law degree hanging on the wall, mine gathering dust in a box somewhere after the layoffs started. Well, that's not the kind of data sharing I expected, I muttered to myself, screenshotting everything. The smart thing would have been to confront her immediately. But 15 years of marriage had taught me that Emily Morrison, née Patterson, didn't respond well to direct confrontation. She was a lawyer, after all. She'd find a way to make this my fault. Instead, I did what I do best. I gathered evidence. Emily's laptop had been acting up for weeks. She'd asked to borrow mine for work stuff, while hers was in the shop. I'd said yes, like the trusting fool I was. Now I understood why she'd been so secretive about it, always closing windows when I walked by. I spent the next 3 hours going through browser histories, cached files, and temporary folders. The picture that emerged made me wish I'd stayed ignorant. David Chen. That was Emily's business partner at the law firm, the guy who drove the silver BMW and wore suits that cost more than my monthly income. The same guy who'd been coming around for strategy sessions that always seemed to require wine and lasted until midnight. The messages went back 6 months. 6 months of planning, scheming, and laughing at the husband who was too stupid to notice. "Jake's working late again," one message read. "Perfect. Come over at 8. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. "He actually thinks you need his old laptop for legitimate work," came the reply. "Does he know you're planning to file for divorce?" That hit me like a punch to the gut. Divorce papers, already drafted, according to the messages. Emily was planning to take everything: the house, our daughter Sophie's college fund, even my tools and equipment. David had connections with judges, ways to make sure I'd be left with nothing. The sun was coming up when I finally closed the laptop. My coffee had gone cold hours ago, but I barely noticed. My mind was racing, calculating, planning. They thought I was stupid. The failed IT guy who couldn't keep up with the modern world. The husband who was grateful for scraps of attention and too pathetic to fight back. Maybe it was time to show them exactly how wrong they were. I heard Emily's alarm go off upstairs. Soon she'd come down, kiss my cheek with those lying lips, and head off to work. She'd ask how my night was, and I'd say fine like I always did. But everything had changed. I just wasn't ready to let her know it yet. "Morning, honey," Emily said 20 minutes later, breezing into the kitchen in her power suit. She looked perfect as always, blonde hair in a neat bun, makeup flawless, not a wrinkle in sight. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," I said, which was true enough. "Coffee's fresh." She poured herself a cup in her travel mug, the one with the law firm logo. "I'll be late tonight. David and I have a big case to prep for." "Of course you do," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Sophie's got her college interview today. Remember?" Emily paused, mug halfway to her lips. For just a second, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Guilt? Annoyance? Then it was gone. "Right. The interview. You can handle that, can't you? I really can't reschedule this meeting. Sure, I said. I'll handle it. Just like I was going to handle everything else. After Emily left, I called my boss at the computer repair shop. Tommy Kowalski had been my friend since high school, back when we both thought we'd conquer the world. Now he ran a small shop fixing laptops and building gaming rigs for teenagers. Jake? You sound terrible. Everything okay? I need some time off, Tommy. Family stuff. Take what you need, man. Business is slow anyway. That gave me the opening I needed. Time to plan, time to investigate, time to turn the tables on the people who thought they could destroy my life without consequences. My first stop was the boxing gym downtown. O'Malley's was the kind of place that hadn't changed in 30 years. Heavy bags hanging from chains, the smell of sweat and leather, old men who'd seen everything and weren't impressed by much. Frank O'Malley had trained fighters since before I was born. He'd also trained me to throw a punch back in my army days, when I was young and angry and thought the world owed me something. Jake Morrison, Frank said when I walked in. Haven't seen you in months. You look like someone ran over your dog. Worse than that, Frank. Someone's trying to run over my whole life. I told him everything. Frank listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or grunting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. So, what are you going to do about it? He asked finally. I don't know yet, but I'm not going down without a fight. Frank smiled, the kind of smile that had intimidated opponents for decades. Good. But remember what I always taught you. Hit them where it hurts, but don't give them an excuse to hit back harder. Win on points, not by getting yourself disqualified. That afternoon, I drove to the tech repair shop where Emily had supposedly taken her laptop. The owner, a nervous guy named Pete, remembered her. Nice lady, he said, but there wasn't anything wrong with her computer. She just wanted the hard drive wiped clean. Said she was selling it. Selling it. Another lie. I was starting to lose count. Did she say why she needed my laptop while hers was being fixed? Pete shrugged. She mentioned something about needing to access files remotely. Said her husband wouldn't mind lending his. Her husband wouldn't mind. Because her husband was a pushover, who never questioned anything. That evening, I picked up Sophie from her college interview. My daughter was 18, smart as a whip, and had inherited her mother's ability to read people. She knew something was wrong the moment she got in the car. Dad? You look weird. Are you and Mom fighting again? Again stung more than it should have. Had we been fighting? I thought we'd just been drifting apart, the way couples do after years of marriage. Apparently, it had been more obvious than I'd realized. We're working through some things, sweetheart. How was the interview? Sophie launched into a detailed account of her meeting with the admissions officer. She was excited about college, about getting out of our small Midwest city and seeing the world. I listened and made appropriate noises, but part of my mind was elsewhere. Emily was planning to use Sophie as leverage in the divorce. The messages had made that clear. She'd paint me as an unstable father, someone who couldn't provide for his daughter's future. David had even suggested ways to make me look incompetent in court. They were going to take my daughter away from me. That night, after Sophie went to bed, I sat in my workshop in the garage. Surrounded by computer parts and half-finished projects, I felt more at home than I had in months. This was my domain, the place where broken things got fixed. Time to fix a few broken things in my life. I started with research. David Chen, attorney at law, partner at Morrison, Patterson and Associates. Yes, the firm had Emily's maiden name on it. Her mother's money had helped start it, back when Emily was fresh out of law school and full of ambition. David was 37, divorced, no kids. He lived in a luxury condo downtown, drove expensive cars, and belonged to the country club where Emily had been spending her Saturday afternoons lately. Tennis lessons, she'd said. I was starting to doubt she'd touched a racket. His social media presence was carefully curated, Photos of exotic vacations, expensive dinners, charity events where he posed with local politicians. The kind of life Emily wanted, the kind I could never provide. But social media also revealed weaknesses. David was vain, insecure about his thinning hair and his height. He name-dropped constantly, trying to impress people with his connections. He was the kind of man who measured his worth by his possessions and his ability to make others feel small. I could work with that. My phone buzzed. A text from Emily. "Working very late tonight, don't wait up." I checked the timestamp on her last message to David. "Jake's asleep by 10 every night. We'll have plenty of time." It was 9:30 p.m. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. Time for some reconnaissance. David's condo building was the kind of place that screamed money, all glass and steel, with a doorman and valet parking. I parked across the street and settled in to wait. I didn't have to wait long. Emily's Honda pulled up to the valet stand at 10:15. She stepped out wearing a dress I'd never seen before, something black and expensive that hugged her curves. The valet's appreciative look made my jaw clench. 20 minutes later, David appeared at his balcony window. Even from across the street, I could see he was shirtless. Emily joined him, and they embraced like lovers in a movie. 15 years of marriage, and she'd never looked at me the way she was looking at him. I sat there for another hour, watching their silhouettes move behind the curtains. When I finally drove home, my hands were shaking with rage. But rage wasn't enough. I needed a plan. The next morning, Emily was all smiles and apologies. "Sorry I was so late, honey. The Patterson case is really heating up." The Patterson case. Her mother's old client, a property development deal that had been dragging on for years. I'd heard about it plenty of times, usually when Emily was explaining why she couldn't make it to Sophie's school events or family dinners. "How's David handling the pressure?" I asked casually. "Oh, you know David. He thrives on this stuff. He's really brilliant when it comes to contract law." Brilliant. The word stung. Emily had stopped calling me brilliant years ago. After she left for work, I drove to the gym. Frank was training a young heavyweight, calling out combinations while the kid hammered the heavy bag. "You look like you made a decision," Frank said when he saw me. "I'm going to make them pay," I said, "but I need to be smart about it." "Smart is good. What do you need?" "Information." "David Chen? You know him?" Frank's expression darkened. "Pretty boy lawyer?" "Yeah, I know him. Comes in here sometimes, thinks he's tough because he took a few kickboxing classes at some fancy gym." "Why?" "He's been sampling the merchandise that belongs to me." Frank nodded slowly. "I see. Well, Chen's got a temper when things don't go his way, and he's got a thing about his car, that silver BMW, treats it like it's his firstborn." "Good to know." "Jake," Frank said, his voice serious. "Whatever you're planning, make sure you can live with it afterward. Revenge is a dish best served cold, but it can leave a bitter taste if you're not careful." "I'll keep that in mind." That afternoon, I followed Emily again. This time she met David at an upscale restaurant downtown. I watched through the window as they held hands across the table, sharing dessert and laughing at private jokes. The sight of my wife feeding another man chocolate cake nearly broke my resolve. I wanted to storm in there, make a scene, let everyone know what kind of people they really were. Instead, I took photos. When they finished dinner, they walked to David's car. He opened the passenger door for her, something he'd stopped doing for me years ago. As they drove away, I noticed David had parked in a handicapped space, too arrogant to walk an extra 50 feet. That gave me an idea. I followed them to a hotel on the outskirts of town, a place perfect for an affair. They disappeared inside, and I sat in my car, simmering with anger. That's when I noticed David's car keys on the dashboard. He'd left the window cracked, probably to avoid hot leather seats. The parking lot was empty, no security cameras in sight. I walked over to his BMW, took out my house key, and scratched both sides of the car. For extra effect, I wrote "cheater" on the windshield with a permanent marker. It felt good, better than good. It felt like justice. Halfway home, Emily's phone rang. "Jake, someone vandalized David's car. Can you believe that? What kind of person does that?" "That's terrible," I replied, keeping calm. "Did you call the police?" "David's handling it. He thinks it was some high school kids." "Yeah, they have no respect," I muttered. Later, Emily was full of sympathy for David and his damaged car. After an hour of discussing insurance and security footage, she mentioned, "The restaurant cameras didn't catch anything. Whoever did it knew the blind spots." "Sounds like someone familiar with security systems," I said casually. "Maybe someone in IT." She gave me a sharp look. "That's an oddly specific theory." "Just thinking out loud. Want some wine?" The next day, I decided to escalate things. If David wanted to play in my world, technology and information, I was about to show him I had the advantage. I quickly cracked David's email password based on the predictable pattern of his birth year and BMW model number. Once inside, I found a goldmine: client communications, billing records, and, most infuriating, emails between David and Emily. They'd been planning the affair longer than I thought. What made me see red was an email about Sophie's college fund. Emily had written, "Sophie's fund is in Jake's name. We'll need to act fast once I file. David, can your friend Judge Morrison help with temporary custody?" David responded, "Leave it to me. Jake won't know what hit him. By the time we're done, he'll be lucky to get supervised visitation." They were plotting to take everything: my house, my savings, and my daughter. They were out to leave me with nothing. Time for them to learn what nothing really meant. I spent the rest of the day planning my next move. It had to be public, humiliating, and legal. I needed them to know their secret was out, but I couldn't risk giving them ammunition in court. The opportunity came sooner than expected. Emily invited me to her firm's charity gala. "It's black tie. I know it's not your thing, but it would mean a lot if you came." As if I were some social embarrassment she had to apologize for. "Of course I'll come." She seemed surprised, maybe suspicious, but I could see she was glad. The gala was held at the country club, the same place where Emily had her tennis lessons. I rented a tuxedo and showed up fashionably late, just as the cocktail hour was ending. Emily, stunning in a red dress, was holding court near the bar with colleagues and clients. David stood beside her, possessively. I worked the room, making small talk with people I'd met at previous events. Emily spotted me and called me over, introducing me to Judge Patterson, her uncle. "Morrison," he said with little enthusiasm. "Emily tells me you fix computers." "That's right, Your Honor. I fix things that are broken." Emily gave me a sharp look, but Patterson didn't react. The evening progressed with speeches and presentations. Emily spoke about their pro bono work, glowing under the spotlight. Once the formalities ended and dancing began, I made my move. I approached the DJ, slipped him a 20, and handed him a flash drive. "Got any requests? Something with more energy?" He perked up. "You got anything?" What I gave him wasn't just music. It was a carefully edited audio file with excerpts from David and Emily's emails, set to music. Nothing explicit, just their words about their plans and their disdain for stupid Jake. The music started innocently enough. Then, gradually, the voices became audible over the instrumental track. "Jake's working late again. Perfect timing. Does he really not suspect anything? God, how did you stay married to someone so clueless? The divorce papers are ready. My uncle can fast-track the proceedings. What about Sophie? She'll understand eventually. Kids adapt." The dance floor cleared as people realized what they were hearing. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. All eyes turned to Emily and David, who stood frozen in the middle of the room like deer in headlights. I walked over to them, my face a mask of innocent confusion. "Honey," I said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "isn't that your voice? It sounds just like you. Emily's face went white, then red. Jake, what did you— I have no idea what's happening, I said, spreading my hands. Maybe someone's playing a prank. You know how these charity events can get. David finally found his voice. Turn it off, he shouted at the DJ. Turn it off right now. But the damage was done. 200 of the city's most prominent citizens had just heard Emily Morrison and David Chen discussing their affair and their plans to destroy Emily's husband. The silence that followed was deafening. Emily grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. We need to talk. Now. Of course, sweetheart, I said. Whatever you need. As we walked toward the exit, I could hear the whispers starting behind us. By tomorrow, the whole city would know that Emily Morrison was a cheating wife and David Chen was a homewrecker. In the parking lot, Emily finally exploded. What the hell do you think you're doing? I think I'm learning about my wife's extracurricular activities, I said calmly. Interesting stuff, very educational. You had no right. I had no right? I laughed, and the sound was ugly even to my own ears. You've been planning to destroy my life for months, and you're talking to me about rights? David appeared beside us, his face twisted with rage. You son of a— Careful, I said, stepping closer to him. We're in public. People are watching. Indeed, several couples had followed us outside, pretending to get fresh air while actually eavesdropping on the drama. David seemed to realize this and backed down, but his eyes promised retribution. This isn't over, Emily hissed. No, I agreed. It's not. I drove home alone, leaving Emily to find her own way back. The house felt different when I walked in, smaller somehow, like it was already slipping away from me. Sophie was waiting in the living room, her laptop open on her knees. She looked up when I entered, her expression unreadable. Dad, she said quietly, we need to talk. My heart sank. Had she heard about the scene at the gala already? In a city this size, news traveled fast. What's on your mind, sweetheart? Mom's been acting weird lately, secretive, and I found some papers in her desk, divorce papers with your name on them. I sat down heavily on the couch beside her. Sophie, are you guys getting divorced? There was no point in lying anymore. It looks that way. She nodded, as if she'd been expecting this. Is there someone else? For Mom, I mean? Yes. David Chen? I stared at her in surprise. How did you— I'm not stupid, Dad. I've seen the way they look at each other. And Mom's been getting dressed up for a lot of work meetings lately. My daughter was 18, legally an adult, old enough to handle the truth. Yes, it's David. Sophie was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, What are you going to do? I don't know yet, but I'm not going to roll over and let them destroy everything we've built. Good, she said fiercely, because what they're doing is wrong and someone needs to make them pay for it. Looking at my daughter's angry face, I realized she'd inherited more than just Emily's intelligence. She'd also gotten my stubborn streak and my sense of justice. Sophie, I said carefully, things might get ugly before this is over. Your mom and David aren't going to take this lying down. Let them try, she said. I'm on your side, Dad. Whatever happens, I'm on your side. That night, I lay in bed listening to Emily's car pull into the driveway at 3 a.m. She crept upstairs like a teenager sneaking in past curfew, probably hoping I was asleep. I wasn't. I was planning. The charity gala had been a good start, but it wasn't enough. Emily and David were wounded, embarrassed, but not defeated. They'd regroup, find a way to spin the story, maybe even use my public humiliation of them as evidence that I was unstable. I needed to hit them where it really hurt. Not just their reputations, but their livelihood, their future, their ability to rebuild after this was over. I needed to destroy them the way they'd planned to destroy me. And I was just getting started. Emily didn't come home the next night, or the night after that. She was staying at David's condo, according to Sophie, who'd overheard a phone conversation between Emily and her mother. "Grandma Patterson is furious," Sophie reported over breakfast. "She's threatening to cut Mom off financially if she doesn't handle this situation appropriately." Handle this situation. As if I was a problem to be managed rather than a husband who'd been betrayed. "What did your mom say to that?" "She hung up on her." That was interesting. Emily's relationship with her mother had always been complicated, but she'd never been stupid enough to alienate the woman who controlled the family money. If she was willing to burn that bridge, she must be more desperate than I'd thought. I spent the morning at the gym, working out my frustrations on the heavy bag while Frank offered commentary and advice. "You rattled them good at that fancy party," he said. "But now they're going to come at you hard. You ready for that?" "Let them come," I said, throwing a combination that made the bag swing wildly. "I've got plenty more where that came from. Just remember what I taught you about fighting dirty. Make sure you can prove they threw the first punch." That afternoon, I got my chance. David showed up at the computer repair shop where I worked, his face twisted with rage and his expensive suit wrinkled like he'd slept in it. "We need to talk," he said, pushing past Tommy Kowalski like he owned the place. "Sure," I said mildly. "What can I help you with? Computer problems?" "You know exactly what this is about. That stunt you pulled at the gala." "What stunt? I was just enjoying the music." David stepped closer, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "You think you're clever, don't you? But you have no idea who you're messing with. I have connections in this city that you can't even imagine." "Connections?" I repeated. "Like Judge Patterson? Emily's uncle?" "Yeah, I met him at the party. Seemed like a nice guy." "This is your last warning, Morrison. Back off. Accept the divorce settlement Emily's prepared, and maybe you'll walk away from this with something. Keep playing games, and I'll make sure you lose everything." I looked around the shop, making sure Tommy was within earshot. "Are you threatening me, David?" "I'm giving you friendly advice." "It doesn't sound very friendly." David's face flushed red. For a moment, I thought he might actually take a swing at me. Instead, he leaned in closer and said, "You're going to regret crossing me." Then he turned and stalked out, leaving the door chime ringing behind him. "Well," Tommy said after a moment, "that was interesting. You want to tell me what's going on?" I filled him in on the basics, the affair, the divorce papers, the plan to take everything I'd worked for. Tommy listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail. "So, what's the plan?" he asked when I finished. "I'm working on it." That evening, I put the next phase into motion. David's threat had been made in front of a witness, which gave me some legal protection for what I was about to do. But more importantly, it told me he was rattled enough to make mistakes. I started with his car. The BMW was parked in its usual spot at the condo building, the scratches from my earlier vandalism still visible despite what looked like a professional repair attempt. This time, I didn't want to damage it. I wanted to embarrass him. I'd stopped at a bait shop on the way over and purchased several pounds of the most pungent fish I could find. Late that night, I broke into David's car. The electronic locks were child's play for someone with my skills, and distributed the fish throughout the interior. Under the seats, in the air vents, tucked into the door panels. By morning, the smell would be unbearable. By the end of the week, it would be permanent. But that was just the appetizer. The main course involved David's smart home system. Like a lot of tech-savvy professionals, he'd invested heavily in home automation. Smart locks, smart thermostat, smart speakers, smart everything. It made him feel cutting-edge and superior. It also made him vulnerable. Most people don't bother changing the default passwords on their smart devices. David was most people. It took me less than an hour to gain access to his entire home network from the comfort of my garage. The next day was Saturday. David was hosting a dinner party for some of the firm's biggest clients, an attempt to do damage control after the charity gala embarrassment. Emily would be there, playing the role of gracious hostess. At exactly 8 p.m., when the party would be in full swing, I activated my surprise. Every smart speaker in David's condo began playing audio clips from his and Emily's email exchanges. Not the edited highlights I'd used at the gala, but the raw, unfiltered conversations. Their plans to frame me as an unfit father. Their mockery of my appearance, my job, my failure to keep up with Emily's success. But the piece de resistance was a conversation I'd found buried in David's deleted files, a recording he'd made of Emily complaining about our marriage, describing intimate details of our relationship, and comparing me unfavorably to her new lover. The smart speakers were connected to the home's intercom system, which meant the audio was playing in every room simultaneously. The volume was locked at maximum, and I disabled the manual controls. The only way to stop it was to cut power to the entire building. I sat in my car across the street, watching the chaos unfold. Lights flickered on and off as David frantically tried to regain control of his own home. People began leaving the building, first a few, then a steady stream. Through David's windows I could see figures moving frantically back and forth. At one point, Emily appeared on the balcony, her face illuminated by the city lights. Even from a distance, I could see her distress. It took them 45 minutes to get the building's maintenance crew to cut power to David's floor. By then, everyone at the party had heard more than enough. I drove home feeling satisfied but not complete. This was psychological warfare, designed to isolate them socially and professionally. But it wasn't enough. I needed something that would hit them where they really lived, their careers, their financial security, their ability to rebuild. That's when I remembered the Patterson case. Emily had been working on it for years, a complex property development deal involving her mother's investment group. It was worth millions, and Emily's success on the case had been a major factor in her partnership at the firm. But according to the emails I'd found, there were problems with the case. Ethical problems. David and Emily had been using confidential information from other clients to give their mother's group an unfair advantage in negotiations. It wasn't technically illegal, but it was a clear violation of legal ethics rules. If the State Bar Association found out about it, both David and Emily could lose their licenses to practice law, and I had all the evidence I needed to make sure they found out. I spent Sunday morning filing a complaint with the State Bar, attaching evidence of ethical violations. I made sure to present myself as a concerned citizen, not a vengeful husband. The complaint was anonymous, sent through a secure form. By Monday, it would be in an investigator's inbox, poised to end 2 careers. That afternoon, Emily came home looking a mess, disheveled and exhausted. She wasted no time. "We need to talk. I can get you coffee. You look tired." "Cut the act, Jake. I know it was you. The car, the speakers, everything." "I don't know what you mean." "Don't play dumb." She slammed her purse down. "You think you're clever, embarrassing us." "Embarrassing you? You did that yourself. I just made sure people noticed." "Pathetic," she spat. "You can't accept that I've outgrown you." "Outgrown me?" I repeated. "Is that what you call adultery? We have a connection you wouldn't understand. We're equals." "Equals? Is that why you've been using confidential information to manipulate property deals?" Her face went pale. "What are you talking about?" "The Patterson case, Riverside Development, the Henderson Trust. Need more examples?" Her silence confirmed it. "You and David have been breaking legal ethics rules. The State Bar won't take kindly to that." "You wouldn't dare." "Wouldn't I?" We locked eyes, years of marriage reduced to hatred. "You want a war?" she said. "I know your weaknesses. And I have resources you can't match." "Bring it on," I replied, masking my true feelings. I still had Sophie, my self-respect, and the chance to rebuild. Emily didn't need to know that. She left, the sound of her car screeching away. Later, Sophie found me working on a broken computer in the garage. Mom came by, she said. Wanted me to stay with her. What did you say? I'm staying here. Good. You don't have to pick sides. I know she loves me, but I don't like who she's become. And I hate David. You've met him? A few times. He talks down to me and wants me sent to boarding school. That fueled my anger. David wasn't just after my wife. He wanted to get rid of my daughter, too. Well, he'll be disappointed. Dad, I know it's wrong, but they deserve it. They do, but that doesn't make it right. I can handle the consequences, she said. Can you? The question echoed in my mind. How far would I go? By Wednesday, both Emily and David had received notices of complaints filed against them. By Friday, they were suspended. The news rocked the legal community. Emily, once a judge candidate, now faced disbarment. Tommy told me they were scrambling for legal representation. Nobody wants to touch this. Too much risk. That felt good, but my satisfaction was short-lived. Later, Detective Ray Collins, an old Army buddy, came by. We need to talk, he said. Your wife and her boyfriend are accusing you of harassment, stalking, criminal mischief. They want a restraining order. I braced myself. I'd expected this. What exactly are they saying? The usual. Following them, vandalizing property, making threats. They're painting you as unhinged. Do they have any proof? Ray smiled grimly. That's what I'm here to find out. Jake, I've known you for 20 years. You're a lot of things, but you're not stupid. So tell me straight, have you been harassing these people? I considered my options. Ray was a friend, but he was also a cop. Anything I said could potentially be used against me. I've been investigating my wife's affair, I said finally. Gathering evidence for the divorce proceedings. If that makes them uncomfortable, well, the truth often does. Investigating how? Public records, social media, observation, nothing illegal. What about David Chen's car? Someone's been vandalizing it regularly. I wouldn't know anything about that. Ray studied my face for a long moment. Jake, I'm going to give you some friendly advice. Whatever you're doing, whatever game you're playing, it's time to stop. These people have connections, resources. They can make your life very difficult if you keep pushing. More difficult than having my wife cheat on me and plan to take everything I own? Yes, Ray said seriously. Much more difficult. I'm talking about criminal charges, jail time, losing custody of your daughter permanently. That got my attention. They're threatening Sophie? They're claiming you're an unfit father, unstable, possibly dangerous. If you give them ammunition to use against you in court. He didn't need to finish the sentence. I understood the implications. So what are you saying? I should just roll over and let them destroy my life. I'm saying you should be smart about this. Get a good lawyer, fight them in court where the rules are clear. Don't give them an excuse to paint you as the bad guy. After Ray left, I sat in my workshop, staring at the wall and trying to process what I'd learned. Emily and David were fighting back, using the legal system to turn me into the villain of this story. The irony was almost funny. I'd spent weeks trying to expose them as liars and cheaters, and now they were using my own tactics against me. But there was one thing they hadn't counted on. I wasn't done yet. That night, I broke into David's condo one last time. Not to vandalize or harass, but to retrieve something that belonged to me. The laptop Emily had borrowed months ago. David's building security was impressive, but not impenetrable. I'd spent enough time surveilling the place to know the guards' routines, the blind spots in the camera coverage, the service entrances that weren't properly monitored. Getting into David's unit was even easier. For all his smart home technology, he'd never bothered to upgrade the basic door locks. A few minutes with a pick set, and I was inside. The condo still smelled faintly of rotting fish, despite what looked like extensive professional cleaning. I found my laptop in David's home office, sitting on his desk like a trophy. But that wasn't what I was really after. David's desktop computer contained years of files, emails, financial records, and personal documents. Everything I needed to understand the full scope of his and Emily's plans. I copied everything to an external drive, then planted a few surprises in his system, nothing destructive, just some programs that would make his life interesting over the next few weeks. As I was preparing to leave, I heard voices in the hallway outside. David and Emily, returning from whatever hole they'd been hiding in. I had maybe 30 seconds before they reached the door. I slipped out onto the balcony and climbed over the railing, hanging from the ledge by my fingertips. It was a 12-foot drop to the landscaping below, not fatal, but definitely painful. The front door opened just as I let go. I landed hard in a flower bed, rolling to absorb the impact the way I'd been taught in the army. My shoulder screamed in protest, but nothing seemed broken. I limped back to my car, adrenaline masking the worst of the pain. As I drove away, I could see lights coming on in David's condo. They'd probably realize someone had been there, but they wouldn't be able to prove it was me. The files I'd stolen were a goldmine of information. Financial records showing David had been skimming money from client accounts. Email threads discussing ways to manipulate court proceedings. Even a recorded conversation where Emily and David discussed planting evidence to make me look unstable. It was enough to destroy them both, but I had to be careful about how I used it. If they could prove I'd obtained the information illegally, it would be worthless in court. I needed a way to get the information to the authorities without implicating myself. The solution came to me the next morning, when Sophie mentioned that her journalism teacher at school was always looking for interesting stories for the student newspaper. What if someone leaked information about corruption in the local legal system? I asked casually. Would that be the kind of story they'd be interested in? Sophie gave me a sharp look. Dad, what are you planning? Nothing illegal, but hypothetically, if someone had evidence of lawyers behaving badly, how would a responsible journalist handle that information? They'd verify it independently, protect their sources, and make sure they could prove everything before going to print, Sophie said. Why? Just curious about how the media works these days. That afternoon, I created an anonymous email account and sent carefully selected files to 3 different recipients: the student newspaper, the city's main daily paper, and a local TV news station. I was careful to include only information that could be independently verified through public records or other sources. The really damaging stuff, the financial irregularities, the ethical violations, the plans to frame me, I saved for last. The first story emerged on Monday morning. Local law firm partners suspended amid ethics investigation. It was a simple news report, but it placed Emily and David back in the public eye just as the initial uproar was fading. The second story ran that evening on the local TV news. Exclusive, documents reveal pattern of legal misconduct. This one had more details, including copies of emails and financial records that painted a picture of systematic corruption. But the real bombshell was the third story, which ran in the student newspaper on Wednesday. The anatomy of a legal conspiracy. How 2 lawyers planned to destroy an innocent man. Sophie's journalism teacher had done her homework, independently verifying every claim and building a timeline that showed exactly how Emily and David had manipulated the legal system for their own benefit. The story went viral within hours, picked up by news outlets across the state, and eventually making national headlines as an example of legal system corruption. Emily and David were finished. Not just suspended, but completely destroyed professionally and personally. No law firm would hire them, no client would trust them, no judge would take them seriously. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt empty. That evening, Emily came to the house one last time. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in the past week. Her hair was unkempt, her clothes wrinkled, her face drawn with exhaustion and defeat. You won, she said simply. Are you happy now? No, I said, and realized it was true. I'm not happy. I'm just tired. We're both finished, you know. David and I. Our careers, our reputations, everything we worked for, gone. You did that to yourselves. Did we? Or did we just fall in love and make the mistake of underestimating a bitter, vindictive man? You planned to take my daughter away from me, I said. You were going to leave me with nothing and call it justice. What did you expect me to do? Emily was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I expected you to be the man I married. The man who would have fought for our marriage instead of destroying it. That man died the day you decided I wasn't good enough for you anymore. Maybe you're right, she said. Maybe we both died a long time ago and we just didn't realize it. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. Sophie wants to stay with you. I won't fight it. She's 18, old enough to make her own choices. Emily, don't, she said. Don't say you're sorry. Don't say you wish things had been different. We both know this was always going to end badly. At least now it's over. After she left, I sat in my kitchen, surrounded by the wreckage of my life. I'd won, but victory felt a lot like defeat. Sophie found me there an hour later, staring at my reflection in the dark window. Dad, you okay? I don't know, I said honestly. I thought I'd feel better when this was over. I thought there'd be some kind of satisfaction in winning. But there isn't. No, there's just emptiness. Like I've spent so much energy on revenge that I forgot what I was trying to get back. Sophie sat down beside me. What happens now? Now we figure out how to rebuild. Both of us. Together? If you want to. I know this hasn't been easy for you, being caught in the middle of all this. I wasn't caught in the middle, Dad. I chose a side. I chose you. Why? Because you fought for what was right. Mom and David, they were willing to destroy an innocent person to get what they wanted. You were willing to destroy yourself to stop them. There's a difference. Maybe she was right. Maybe there had been a difference, at least at the beginning. But somewhere along the way, I'd become something I didn't recognize. Someone who took pleasure in other people's pain, who justified cruelty as justice. The man Emily had married would never have done the things I'd done. But then again, the woman I'd married would never have done what she did either. We'd all become different people, shaped by betrayal and anger and the desire for revenge. The question now was whether we could become better people, or if we were doomed to remain the worst versions of ourselves. I looked at my daughter, 18 years old and wise beyond her years, and decided that maybe there was still hope for redemption. Maybe not for Emily and David, who would spend years trying to rebuild their shattered lives. Maybe not even for me, who would always carry the knowledge of what I was capable of when pushed too far. But maybe for Sophie, who had seen the worst of human nature and still believed in the possibility of justice. Maybe that was enough. The longest night was finally over, and morning was breaking on the horizon. It wasn't the dawn I'd expected, but it was the one we had. And sometimes, that has to be enough.